Good evening. We'll go ahead and call tonight's public meeting to order. Renee, if you would show a quorum with Mrs. Kraft and Mr. Pavey absent. And the purpose of tonight's public meeting is just to make the general public, our taxpayers, aware of a proposed change to our superintendent's contract. And this goes back to May, when we actually were having our conversations with Dr. Mellon in the recruitment process. We had discussions about length of contract, salary, vehicle usage, insurance, lots and lots of things. And when between our conversations and the time we had the public hearing, where Mr. Pavey went through the contract, at that point, Dr. Mellon then got his first look at what was in the contract and noticed a couple of discrepancies. But in good faith, because we had already had a public hearing, he just said, you know, we can fix it later. So that's pretty much what we're proposing. One of the changes is in, it's actually number 1, which would be a provision, item 2 of the term of employment. Currently, the contract says that at the end of his employment, which would be June 30th of 2015, is that right? 15. That if he gets a evaluation with a 3-point, it says superior evaluation, then we would automatically give him a 1-year addition to his contract. Well, that's logistically impossible, because we have to notify the superintendent by December 31st of 2014 if we intend to renew his contract. So just the logistics of that, it doesn't work. So what we're proposing, and we're not voting on this tonight, the whole idea of having a public hearing is so that our public gets an opportunity to listen to the proposed changes, contact your board members, let them know how you feel, let them know if you have concerns, ask your questions, and then it'll actually come up for a vote at the first meeting in December, which is the 4th. But the proposed change is that at the end of the superintendent's first year, which would be June 30th, 13, he would then have an evaluation by the board, and if the evaluation is a 3.0 or better, which is mirrored on purpose to look like the teacher evaluations that will be coming forth, then he would have a 1-year addition to his contract. So that's the first proposed change. The second proposed change is just really a matter of how the annuity is paid. It currently says it will be paid out at the end of each year, and what that means is Dr. Mellon's missing out on a whole year of investment opportunity. So what he's requested is just to have that paid out per pay period over the course of the year instead. The end amount is the same, no change to the total amount, just a difference in how it's paid. Per pay period versus at the end of each year. And that's all that we're proposing. At this time, we'd like to open it up if the public has any questions at all. All right. Seeing no questions from the public, we'll close tonight's hearing. And we thank you for coming. And we'll go right into our special meeting. If you would, join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, now we're to approval of agenda. Dr. Mellon, do you have any proposed changes?
Board, we do need to make one change to the agenda, and that is an addendum to personnel.
A motion to approve with addendum.
Motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 6 with the addendum.
Yes.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. White. Any discussion? All in favor?
Is this the whole agenda, or is this just
Is this 1 through 6 or just that
Oh.
recommendation?
We're actually approving the agenda change, I'm sorry, with
Okay.
the addition of the
Yeah.
addendum. I'm
The
sorry.
change.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. So,
No.
let's try that one more time. We need to approve tonight's agenda with the addition of the personnel addendum. All in favor?
But now I can't.
And opposed? 4-1.
I tried to vote for it, I did the
Jiminy
best I could.
Christmas. I'm sorry.
You okay?
Y'all bear with me, I'm having an allergy attack. I'm sorry. All right, so now then, we come to the consent agenda, approval of items 1 through 6 with the addendum. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Mr. Satterley, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. White. Any discussion?
I'd like some question on the personnel issue, dealing with the Director of Transportation. I had a question about the employment package that will be put forward for the assistant or director, I guess. What is the title?
Director of Transportation.
Director of Transportation. And I'm not aware of the you've given me some. Can you give me a little bit of a synopsis of the package that will be approved or as part of his employment package?
Yes, he'll receive a contract at a salary of, I believe, $88,199. Maybe that's the it's $88,199. Regular benefits, health benefits that every other administrator receives. As a transportation director, our current transportation director has use of a vehicle, and this individual, our new director of transportation, would also have use of a corporate vehicle because he's out driving the roads all the time. One of the things that we've been talking about is the vehicle that's being currently used by our director of transportation has a lot of miles on it. We also have another vehicle out front here that has a lot of miles, and the thought was that it might be time for us to look at turning those vehicles in and bringing a new vehicle on board just because of the amount of miles that the other vehicles have on them currently.
And the vehicle will be provided with the normal IRS type provisions for personal use or whatever's involved in that.
Yes, and he's been made aware of that, and yes, that would be the case.
And how will we do that? Which way will we? Are we going to put that as part of his compensation, or how exactly?
He'll have to report. Sandy, can you help me on that?
Thank you. You have regular IRS forms that are supposed to be utilized. Okay.
Also, Mr. Gilbert, I'm sorry, it's $88,390 would be his compensation.
And that's based on the last salary schedule that we put together for directors and assistant superintendents, et cetera.
Yeah, what we've done is we've brought forth to you a new salary schedule for directors and executives that we've altered and modified for you, and it's based upon that. We used to have multiple salary schedules for multiple positions at this level, and so what we've done is we've combined everything into two salary schedules, one for directors and then one for executive level individuals. And so it simplified it, and basically we've placed that individual on the step according to experience on that new salary schedule.
So there's no longer a classified and certified list. It's all, directors are all on the same schedule.
Same schedule, yes.
If we approve it tonight, it's on the consent agenda.
It might be.
That's the one that we approve later on that we're okaying right now. I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does he have a CDL license?
No.
No.
And frankly, that's a good question because, frankly, we feel it's a benefit not to have it because when the transportation director has a CDL license, they end up driving a bus a lot for, as a substitute. And then when there are issues that occur during pickup times in the morning or drop-off in the afternoon, now our transportation director is locked onto a bus transporting kids instead of being able to get to the scene of a situation and address it. Says we're consulting around the area, that's fairly commonplace now, is directors of transportation not to have the CDL because we want them to be able to respond to whatever issues may arise in the morning or afternoon, or be on buses, riding buses, monitoring student behavior if necessary, helping to provide coaching for drivers, evaluating drivers. And so we feel that there's going to be, benefit as our new transportation director comes in for him not having a CDL. Because it's too easy to jump on a bus because that's the mentality is you want to help and you're going to jump on a bus and drive it. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we need to have other people driving buses, and this individual needs to be out doing his job as a director.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions on consent agenda items 1 through 6? All right, the motion has been made and seconded to approve, so we'll take the vote. All in favor? And opposed? So that's 4-1. Next, we have gifts to buildings. Mr. Shatterly, you want to do the honors?
Well, of course, and she probably already got it on the screen back there. Just every time we moved this to a discussion item, because every time we had a meeting, we pulled it off to discuss it, so we might as well. It looks like New Washington Middle High School got from the Clark County Jail $2,000 for the FFA. River Valley from Tri Kappa Alpha Kappa chapter got a $50 for Young Hoosier Reading. Gordon Porter got a $100 for supplies, and the Charlestown Middle School got, or I think they raised that. There's a program for the Rachel's Challenge. Anyway, I think we discussed that at the last meeting about broadening that throughout the district. But that was $1,400, and that was an excellent project. So, once again, the community always comes through with something, and we just like to acknowledge that.
Motion to approve? Is there a second? Ms. Christensen, thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Next is approval of the impact initiative.
Board, it's a pleasure for me this evening to bring to your attention the work of many of our administrators and teachers as we have put together what we call the impact program. In this impact program, you can see improving mastery, proficiency, achievement, and culture through teaching, and it's reaching every student. We want to impact every student. And really, it's looking at what could be referred to as a response to instruction program, but really enhancing what we do with it here in Greater Clark. And what I'll do is I'll be working through this presentation along with Mrs. Schellenberg and also Mrs. Schnepp, and because they were key facilitators in helping us drive through this. So if we could go to the next slide. Why impact? First of all, we believe that it's important that we continue academic growth for each student in our school corporation. We've been very fortunate over the past 3 years to improve student achievement across our school corporation, but now it's time for us to make sure that we are addressing the needs of each and every student. It also will provide consistent positive behavior supports in all schools. PBIS is a program that has been and our school system has been engaged in, but not necessarily at every building and not necessarily in a consistent manner. So we want to try to bring more consistency throughout our district in regard to behavioral expectations for students. It also will address state compliance requirements in the areas of out-of-school suspensions, primarily focused on subgroup overrepresentation. And I think the effort here is to assure that every student gets equitable discipline no matter his or her race, SES, gender, or abilities. In reviewing policies, procedures, and practices, the implementation of a consistent program for positive behavior supports in each building was essential in order to make equity a reality. We also want to address our state report card components. As you know, growth is the key factor as you look at the grades in schools across the state. And it's not just growth of students who are struggling to perform, but it's the growth of all students. And this is a program that helps us do that. This especially includes those focus schools that we have. Our focus schools are 3 schools that received a D grade. The state requires us to have a specific plan in place to help them move out of that D level. And we also need to provide enrichment support for our I-Read 3 students. All of our 3rd graders, as you remember, have to take an exam, a standardized assessment, to show that they're reading at grade level. So we believe this impact program will address all of those areas. When you look at response to instruction, it's really broken down into tiers. In Tier 1 really is what is dealing with that core level of instruction across our school corporation. So in other words, all of our teachers in classrooms need to make sure that they are addressing, to the greatest extent they can, our entire student population. But the research shows that in many cases, whatever we're teaching is sometimes picked up and learned by 80% or more of our students, but not necessarily 100% in every case. So the focus is, what is our Tier 1 instruction? What do we think needs to be occurring with every teacher in every classroom across the school system? So that's the first tier. There are some non-negotiables for curriculum instruction and assessment that we'll share with you some more. And again, the goal is we need to reach 80% or more of all students in Tier 1. Tier 2 and Tier 3 is where it really starts to pick up in terms of more intensive intervention. Tier 2 does provide support to students who have fallen behind in terms of their grade level skills. We're going to go into detail as to how that will specifically be done. But normally, what you do is you provide an additional level of support for students that generally will reach another 10 to 15% of students. So if students don't get it the first time, then with additional help or support, then generally 10 to 15% of those kids will get it the second time. But there are going to be some kids that still after 2 times around, 2 levels of intervention, don't understand concepts. So that's where you move into Tier 3. So that's very intensive support for students, and we're going to go over the specifics of what that looks like in a minute. But those are students who are significantly struggling in school. So Tier 3 is really something that supports roughly 3 to 5% of our student population. So we're going to go over what these things look like more specifically in our school corporation.
I'm going to start with the academic components, and then Ian's going to share the behavioral. But as Dr. Mellon said, our Tier 1 is really what we've been spending the last 3 years, going into our 4th year on, and that's really improving the quality and the consistency of our instructional program throughout the district. It's what we really kind of, when we look back and look at the gains that we've made academically in terms of ISEP performance, it really comes from the conversations around these areas. For the first part, curriculum, be it language arts or math, we're standards-based now. We don't follow necessarily the scope and sequence of a textbook anymore. We really use either state standards, and now are transitioning to the national standards of Common Core. Our goal clarity windows are basically a way for us to take a standard and back map it or to deconstruct it so that as professionals in the instructional field that we know and understand and have a common understanding of what the standard means and what the kids have to do in order to demonstrate proficiency. Our instruction, we make sure that we have at least a 90-minute literacy block in the elementaries with an additional 30 minutes for writing. So we're looking at 120 minutes for kids in grades K through 5. In the past, you would have seen maybe 100 to 125 minutes for K2, but maybe 3-5, they may end up going back to kind of 45 minutes. We've cleaned that up where it's all 120 minutes and really have spent a lot of time in the area of literacy. When you see some jargon words, SBRRs, it's scientifically based reading research. We try to make sure that whatever programs we utilize, that there's strong research behind them. And then our LARs are our learning and assessment rubrics. and those are developed by our teachers where they deconstruct or decompose a standard or a set of standards so that we clearly understand at all knowledge levels what that standard is trying to assess for the students. As we move into our secondary, we have extended literacy blocks. We may not make maybe 120 minutes, but we do typically double block or have extended time at our middle school. And from our high school perspective, our high school classes run anywhere from about 47 to 52 minutes, depending on the building. And again, we have bell-to-bell instruction. When you look at our assessments, most of our assessments are state-driven, be them DIBELS or Acuity as part of a state grant pilot. The iRead program, the ISTEP or ECA. You'll notice that one we've highlighted here, we'll talk about that in the next portion of the board agenda, is this concept of STAR. The STAR is an assessment series that we've looked at. We've spent really since August with groups of teachers and administrators really looking at our program and saying, do we have the best tools and are we utilizing the best tools? And one of the things that we found is that our SRI, which is our Scholastic Reading Inventory, that was basically a simple computerized test to give us a text level or a reading level for students. What we found as we were kind of breaking down what our needs were, that particular test did not give us enough diagnostic information, so we started to ask questions, are there better tools out there? And we'll talk a little bit more later about the STAR program. You'll see it both on language arts and math. We feel like we have found a tool that will really beef up our program and that can be used efficiently and effectively in both language arts and math. One of the things when we look at how do we determine if our kids are progressing, our teachers through period zero collaborate. They use common assessments in their buildings at their grade levels. They pull that data together and they say, our instruction is effective if 80% of our students are achieving at 80%. We try to, if you look at the high school, it's marked at 70% because we try to look at what does it take to pass ISTEP or what does it take to pass ECA. And then we translate that into our own kind of thresholds for our assessment. If you go to the next slide, you'll see math looks pretty much the same in terms of the curriculum and instruction. One difference is our balanced math program that we have had a team really over the last 4 years train. We have trainers in each of the buildings. We really saw a huge jump in our math scores when we adopted this instructional program, and we've carried it through. Our funding has really been cut for continued training, but this is something that second semester we really are going to have to make sure we have those supports in place because we really believe that's a strong program. Again, you'll see that rather than SRI for an assessment tool for our math, we looked that the STAR product offers us that math assessment piece that we have not had, and then our achievement assessment, our achievement levels are set up as the same. We move to behavioral. Again, we'll kind of break down our tier 1.
Yeah, the good news is the better your instruction is, the fewer behavior problems you're going to have. And that's really something that we've seen and is positive. But we also knew that we had to have some non-negotiables in terms of behavior too. And while the academic group has been working every Friday morning, the behavioral group has been working too. And we really looked at some things that we wanted to happen. In terms of curriculum, we really looked at making sure that every building had identified those character traits and those behavior expectations that they want kids to have. We wanted to make sure that they have a behavior matrix, and that is, when you look around a building, what are your expectations? Because your expectations are different in the cafeteria than they are in the classroom. Making sure that we posted those things and kids knew what were expected. Recognition, we talked about this before, and we spend a lot of time talking about what kids aren't doing, but we need to recognize and affirm that kids are doing things right. And some of the good news for us when we ran our first quarter data, we are seeing that 80 to 85% of our kids are doing just what they need to be doing. And then having predictable consequences. Letting kids know ahead of time what the expectations are and also what the consequences are if there is incompliance. The key to this whole thing, though, is teaching. And we talked about that back in August, I guess, when we presented. And that is, we teach arithmetic, we teach reading, but do we teach behavior? And that is essential. If we are going to expect kids to act in a certain way, then we have to let them know what that is. And so it's really important that each school look at it from the point of view of the teachers know what is expected to be taught to the students, and then the students are taught, and we teach it all over the place, not just in the classroom, but in the hallways, and we practice that in the cafeteria and wherever else we are, so the kids know clearly. And then in terms of our assessment, it's a little bit different, but we're keeping data on kids, whether it's teacher-managed kind of minor behaviors, but also office discipline referrals, or what we call ODRs. How many of those are there? In-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, if kids are removed from the classroom, and detentions, whether it's lunch or after school or Saturday school. So we're keeping all of that information to make sure that we have some consistency throughout our schools. If you go to the next slide, one of the things we also talked about is, well, this is kind of a big project. How are we going to coordinate it, whether we're talking about academic or behavior? And we really look, when we're looking at Tier 1, that's really teacher-driven. We're looking at grade level teams, looking at their data and making decisions about how to work with kids, whether it's academic or behavioral. At the high school, it's a little different. We look at people in terms of the courses they're teaching. When we get to Tier 2, then we're starting to talk about grade level teams being involved, but also maybe the interventionists in that building, or some behavioral issues, the behavioralist, which could be a teacher who's knowledgeable in behavior, somebody from psychological services, it could be a counselor. And then we also look at administration being involved. And then finally, when we get to Tier 3, that's where we're talking about kids having some serious needs. And there we agreed that should be chaired by the building principal. And that impact team would be made up of the administrator, the teacher, an interventionist, it may be a behavior specialist, special ed teacher, it might be the SAM. It's really going to depend on the resources within that building, how they put that team together.
We spent a lot of time trying to determine what are going to be the thresholds for kids to receive the additional support as they move into to Tier 2. For our primary grades, K-2, right now we currently utilize DIBELS as part of the state grant, and DIBELS does a nice job in terms of just giving us a visual and indicating for kids where their grade spans are, where their achievement spans are. And we've set up that if a child's at benchmark or progressing or advanced, they would remain in Tier 1. But for Tier 2, if they indicated that they were in strategic, in other words, they were falling just a little bit short of grade level expectations, then they would receive Tier 2 services. And then Tier 3 services would be those students that were identified as intensive. We broke down SRI, which is, again, that reading, that text level, to our proficient, basic, and our highest need would be those students that are in a below category. How we would translate that if we are approved to move forward with the STAR, we'll have to utilize their ranges as well. We also utilize Acuity to kind of help us establish those thresholds, and typically it kind of looks like a norm reference or our old percentiles. If the student is in the 0 to 25% percentile, then typically that would indicate to us that they have significant needs. And Acuity is a test that we give. This year we're giving it grades 2 through 8, but we also include grades 9 and 10 in the ECA areas. It's probably the most strongly aligned to ISTEP, so it gives us a lot of really good information about how students are going to perform on ISTEP. In math, we were a little bit short. We have our M-Class, which is part of our DIBELS program, and we have Acuity, but we also saw the need that if the STAR purchase is made, that will really help round out our assessment needs in terms of identifying and qualifying for students. On the far left, or far right corner, you'll see we're also trying to identify those kids that would qualify for enrichment. We do have advanced programming, we do have honors, but we also know that there are those kids that we would like to provide extension opportunities, be it in terms of elective opportunities or just book clubs, just some way to kind of take them to the next level in their academics. We wanted to look at academic performance too, and we spent a lot of time talking about this. We've actually spent a couple years talking about grades, but one of the things we wanted to do is to make sure that we're catching kids that have more than one F on their report card. If they have one F, we feel like that's a Tier 1 issue, that's a classroom teacher's responsibility. if they actually have, if a student has two or more Fs, we feel that kind of moves them into a higher need. It could be that they're not testing below grade level, but for some reason something is preventing them from being successful academically in school, and we want to make sure that we have support in place for those students as well. So we've identified Tier 2 as a student that has 2 to 3 Fs on their report card quarterly, and then a student who has 4 or more Fs quarterly would move into a Tier 3, and we would provide intensive support for them. So we're trying to make sure we capture every kid at some level. Ian will talk about the behavioral.
You see, we got a little lengthy on behavior, so let me just talk about that very quickly. I'm not going to go through every one of these. But when we looked at behavior, we had a lot of discussion. We talked about the fact that at what point is it that a student needs to be referred on to Tier 2? And we talked about having at least more than four office referrals per quarter. We also looked at in-school suspension as 4, or 2 out-of-school suspensions, or 2 alternative school suspensions. And it doesn't necessarily, when we look at classroom disruption, again, the F kind of thing, because sometimes kids do have those academic skills, but their behavior interferes, and that causes them to get the F. We looked at attendance, we looked at temporary student removal, we looked at chronic classroom disruptions, and then also sometimes parent referral. So all of those, we kind of kept in mind that these are kids that once they hit that mark, we would at least have them on watch to move into Tier 2, and really sitting down and having the discussion about these students and what we need to do in order to help them. And then we looked at Tier 3, and there we really looked at lack of progress in Tier 1 or Tier 2, that 6 in-school suspensions, 3 out-of-school suspensions, or 3 alternative suspensions, threats to self or others, deliberate or pre-planned aggression towards adult peers, possession or sale of drugs or alcohol, weapons, and any kind of inappropriate sexual activity on school grounds. Those are kind of the things that we looked at and said, these are the things, these are the triggers. Our hope, of course, with this is that we'll catch them at Tier 2. We won't even be at Tier 3 because we're going to be working with those kids at Tier 2 to try to give them the intervention that they need.
Our next kind of task was to define, well, now that we've identified them, the students, what are we going to do with them? And, the first thing that we all have to come to an understanding is there's no silver bullet out there. Every student's needs are different. If there was a silver bullet, we would have bought it, used it, and everyone would have. But what we needed to make sure of is that whatever program we use, that the one thing we wanted to make sure we were consistent is that we actually developed a plan for the individual student. So you'll see in both Tier 2 and Tier 3 that each of these identified students will have an academic improvement plan, and that plan will provide enough information to the professionals who are making decisions by utilizing our student data management system, PowerSchool, and it will provide all of the students' assessments, their longitudinal from the time they joined us to all the information will be there and be readily available for the teachers to develop the right plan. When we talked about impact groups, we probably have referred to them in the past as intervention groups or tutoring. The programs that they may actually use, we have a variety of programs going on in the district. We've used early success, sort of success, and basically, and I hate to use the word, but they're canned programs. They're direct instruction programs. Or we may use a teacher-created model. It just depends on what the students need. For our enrichment, for our advanced students, we have advanced programming or advanced placement classes. As we move up into secondary, we kind of look at, we have courses that are set to support students. We have language arts labs, we have math labs. When we talk about stretch, we have a stretch reading program that is a Tier 2 intervention for high school students who that goes along the lines and supports Read 180, our Read 180 program. When you look at Tier 3, we do have our Read 180 program, which is a strong kind of a hybrid class where it utilizes teacher instruction, direct instruction, and computer-based instruction. It's very heavy into reading skills and breaking down reading skills. And we also have a Systems 44, which is probably, if you think about if you think about Read 180 being more comprehension and vocabulary development, your Systems 44 really gets into word skills and phonics and, so I mean, those are for kids that are really significantly behind academically, or in terms of their reading skills. And then in our Tier 3 for enrichment, we do have the academic honors and the advanced placement program.
When we think about behavior improvement plans, we just listed some of the things that could be done there, and that is check in, check out, social skills training, anger management. The thing about Tier 2 interventions is that those they're not programs so much as, or they are programs. They're things that you readily have in place for kids in order to plug the kids into those, just like you're talking about when you look at the skills that kids need academically at Tier 2. When we look at Tier 3 for kids with behavior, then we're looking at a functional behavioral assessment. And what that means is we're really gathering data to look at what is the behavior that is occurring and what is the student gaining from that behavior. And then from that, we build a plan around that. And that one really demands some involvement of the parent because we need their permission in order to do the assessment. And then together, we'll write a plan to intervene with the student in terms of behavior.
And I guess the next step is, the importance of the parents and their involvement in this process. One of the key concepts of this program is that everyone has to be accountable. The student, the parent, and our educators all have to be accountable to this process. So you can see one of the big factors in Tier 1 is that when a student is struggling in the classroom, it'd be the expectation that the teacher is making a contact to the parent. And this would be an actual contact, a conversation that the teacher would have with the student to make sure that the parent understands fully what the situation is. Trying to enlist the support of the parent, making sure that we form a team to try to help that child. So that's Tier 1. Tier 2, that means that a specific meeting is going to be held. Again, it could be a grade level team, it could be a departmental team at the high school, but a team of teachers will get together and develop a specific plan. There'll be a form that will be developed. It'll be computerized. Data will fill automatically. There'll be drop-down menus to help make it easier for teachers to work through that. But a plan will be developed, and that plan will be then forwarded to the parent, and a parent contact again will be made to share with that parent that the plan is coming. And if there's any questions or concerns, feel free to contact. But if it's a Tier 3 level student, the most intensive student, it'd require a parent conference. So the parent would come in, meet with that team, the impact team in this case, which would be that representative group in our school, and they'd have that parent conference, and again, look at the plan and make sure that everyone's on the same page. Now, a couple key factors, too, in this process is we're talking about an 8-week window. So once a plan is developed for a child, a Tier 2 or Tier 3 child, it would be reviewed after 8 weeks to see the effectiveness of that plan. But if you go to the next slide, it's important that we progress monitor how we're doing. So we develop this plan, we have kids involved in the concept and in the plan, and what's important is that we're going to progress monitor them in Tier 2 or Tier 3 every 2 weeks. So when we meet together, again, after 8 weeks and review whether the plan was successful, we'll have 4 data points to look at for that student to see if we saw growth or not. Now, it's possible in Tier 2 that the student has not grown sufficiently. We don't see progress. So they may have to then transition to Tier 3, and there may have to be that conference that will be held with that impact team to develop a new plan that will then be followed for the next 8 weeks. And again, after that 8 weeks, we'll sit back down again and we'll see where we are. In some cases, after 16 weeks, depending upon the age of the child and so on, it may be possible that that child may be in need of an assessment for special services. That's possible. But in the overwhelming majority of cases, this program, this RTI Impact Program, is going to improve the academic and behavioral success for every child. And so you can see we're going to universally screen 3 times a year. We're going to focus on reading And that's why we're going to talk to you a little bit more in a minute about what we call the STAR assessment program, because we think it's what's best. But I think that it's important that you understand that we're going to have a written plan that everyone is accountable to. We've been doing a lot of intervention in this school system over the past several years, but we have not necessarily monitored or held everyone accountable to the plan, and that was sort of consistent that we needed to get that accomplished. Another big key with this program is enrichment is occurring, or impact time is occurring during the school day. So in almost every case, our elementary schools have built-in time, 30 minutes, in which all students, regardless of their level of ability, are going to go and be enriched during that time frame. Some low-level readers are going to go to certain teachers or certain interventionists and get special help and assistance. And certain kids who are very high-level readers are going to go with other students who are high-level readers, and they're going to be working with another teacher to extend their skill set and read things at a higher level, and so on and so forth. So the enrichment piece is something that's being built in. Now at our middle schools, we're working hard to build that into the best of our ability for second semester, but we're also working on a plan to adjust our middle school day for next year to accommodate that enrichment opportunity. So we can have kids going where they need to go at the same time during the day and to get that help that they need. At the high school level, we're still investigating our options related to how we provide that kind of assistance to kids, but we're working on that currently. I really believe that what we've done is over the last 3 years, Tier 1 intervention, which mainly has been our goal clarity process, has really done a great job of moving the large base of our students to higher levels. But now we're at a point where we need to take our academic initiatives to another level, and this is how we get them there. We have to do a better job, a more effective job helping individual students by providing additional supports, and we believe this is the way that we're going to get that accomplished. I do need to recognize, before I forget, we do have some of our members of our instructional cabinet that have been working every Friday on this for the entire year up to this point. They're here today, and if I could at least have them stand and thank them. Please, you guys, please stand. This is just a portion. We have got great leadership from our teachers and administrators, and it's been an honor for me to be part of the instructional cabinet. Both Amy and Ann have done a great job facilitating their group, as well as Travis, in helping us move forward with this initiative. And so I think at this time, we'd be available to maybe answer questions and so on, right?
Sure. Dr. Mellon, you need a motion to approve the implementation. Is that what you need from us tonight?
Yes.
Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Ms. Christensen, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. White. Any questions?
Thanks for all the work.
I do have one, and I don't know how far back in the slide it goes, maybe just a couple back from there, where we talk about enrichment at the high school level. We have had for a while academic honors, but we haven't had a lot of participation. So what's our plan to get our students who are capable to actually delve into, those enrichment programs? How are we going to do that?
Well, I think the key factor that we've talked about in multiple groups and meetings is our guidance staff, our counselors at our high school level. We've got a great group of people there. And it's really going to be important that we do a really good job of encouraging and pushing kids gently to the next level. Because it's easy for us to perhaps settle on a certain level of coursework and maybe not push ourselves to that higher level, to that next level. And one of the issues that we have in our school system is we need a higher percentage of students earning academic honors diplomas. We need that. We're not where we should be. And in order to make that happen, we have the programming, for those kids. We just need to continue to identify those kids and to continue through our administrative and counseling teams to push those kids to higher levels. So we've been having those conversations, and I think you'll start to see some changes moving forward.
Any other questions? All in favor? 5-0. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Next is purchase of Star Enterprise Assessment.
I'll work with Amy on this just a little bit. As Amy pointed out, it's vital that we have a tool that we can use that will universally screen all of our students. So we did a lot of research and found from Renaissance Learning a product called Star Enterprise. And it's been nationally recognized as one of the best programs out there, especially for response to instruction. So we brought them in and had them make presentations to our administrative group and to our instructional cabinet. And Star Enterprise, what's great about it is in the same amount of time that we currently use SRI to assess for reading, we can assess all of our students, K through 12, in reading and math in the same amount of time that we were doing using SRI. So that's the first real advantage of the program. The second advantage is it breaks down. SRI does not give you any diagnostic information. It doesn't tell you if a student is a low reader. It doesn't break it down and diagnose why they're a low reader. Star Reading does. So you universally screen them. It also provides a diagnostic report. So now we can see specifically what does that child need. Does the child need help with vocabulary, reading comprehension, phonemic awareness? What is it that child needs? So that's the other thing that this does. It also allows you to progress monitor as often as you would like. Now, we're talking every 2 weeks, but on the same tool, we can universally screen a student, and 2 weeks later, after some intervention, test them again through the same tool, and it's only about 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes is all it takes. And it's on the computer, and you get immediate results. So you can't beat that. But then based upon that assessment that we've done, then we can make decisions as to whether we're making progress or not. And the last thing that the product does is it allows for instructional resources. So if a student is struggling in reading or math, it provides resources for the teacher to use to help improve, to help that teacher better improve that instructional practice for those kids. So what we're talking about is this. And if I miss anything, please don't hesitate to jump in. I'm just on a roll right now. So, what I would also tell you is this: the purchase of the product, it's about $146,000 to purchase. Now, we have a common school fund loan that we did have approved through the state. We can pay. We have money in that loan to help pay for the product, the initial cost. The annual cost is $56,000. Now, SRI, we pay $30,000 a year approximately for, and we also have a test that we've been giving that we no longer want to participate in called Terranova, and that's $44,000 a year. So, we see us pulling out of SRI, pulling out of Terranova, which will save us over $70,000. Obviously, this product is going to cost $56,000 a year. So we're not going to be spending any more money on our assessment and get a much more efficient, comprehensive package. We feel that for this program to be successful and to be really effective and efficient, this is the product that we need, and we want to bring it forward to you for your approval tonight. Did I miss anything?
No, I think the only, the newest reporting component of it also gives that growth data that we know is aligned to our state report card. So again, teachers would have that instantaneously once their students complete the assessment. So it's kind of taking us into a newer age of assessment that we probably need.
I also need, just so you understand, the SRI gives students a Lexile score, which is an indicator on a 2,000-point scale of a student's reading ability. This STAR program also has a 2,000-point scale for reading, because one program that has been really effective in our school system is Reading Counts. And Reading Counts is that basis for deciding where students should be reading comes from that Lexile score, that 2,000-point score. So with us, the worry was if we pulled SRI off the table, that where were we going to get that score? Well, STAR provides that same score. So we want to make sure that that's not something that we're taking away or hurting, our reading counts program here. We still are involved in Read 180. So the only thing that's changing is we're pulling out of SRI for STAR, which is more comprehensive, and we'll no longer need to do Terra Nova, so we get that savings.
So we need a motion to approve the purchase of the STAR Enterprise program.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. White. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Satterley. Any discussion or questions?
Just one thing, Dr. Mellon, this will provide, and I know the program you're talking about, they go in and take the book test and it tells them nothing, but whether they passed or not. And this is gonna give you a little information on why they didn't pass it, because I've seen that program, and I thought it didn't work real well. So, I mean, that's just how kids go back and take it over and over again, and until they passed it, with no real understanding of what they're missing, I guess.
The other great advantage of this program is not only do you get reading and math at the same time in roughly about a 45-minute period, but one of the things that our people are pretty excited about is we don't have a real good universal screening tool for math. And so a real advantage, as I look out at some of our principals out there that are nodding their heads, what they're very excited about is we've not had a tool in our school corporation that provides that ability to screen our kids in terms of their math skills. Where are they struggling? So we can better pinpoint intervention. This provides that.
And the only other question I had you mentioned Lexile. Is it the same scale? And the reason I ask is because we have our library, the books are all Lexile rated, and kids can check out in their Lexile range. So if a kid's 1,000 now, they test on this, the range would still be 1,000. Okay.
In fact, on our instructional cabinet, we had some media specialists, and they almost had a heart attack when we first were talking about this, because our people have done such great work in our schools to, based upon Lexiles, redesign their libraries. So we had to assure people right away that it's the same 2,000-point scale, and it will not change that whatsoever. So it's not a waste of effort for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Next is permission to advertise additional appropriations.
Turn this over to Dr. Deichel.
Hello. What I'm asking permission for today is to do 2 additional appropriations, one for the general fund in the amount of $300,000. Where this money came from basically is we have a fund, it's an in and out fund. Money goes in there from different funds to pay for different things, Social Security, state tax, federal tax, all the things that we have to withhold from the employees. Also, our portion that goes in there, over a period of time, last 5, 10, 15 years, this fund has built up a cash balance. And we've been written up in the last 2 audits because we have not been able to find out exactly what fund this goes to. So we've checked with the State Board of Accounts, and they said we could go ahead and take the excess out and just move it into the general fund. So that's why we're doing an additional appropriation for $300,000 for the general fund to up that appropriation. Then the rainy day fund, this is our full dollar amount that we have in the rainy day fund, $3,556,696. So far, we've used almost $2.4 million of it back in September. I may have to use a little bit more. I don't know exactly how much. The end of the year will be real close as far as the appropriation goes. So I might have to take a little bit more out. So we're just asking for the full amount. If we don't need it, we're not going to use it. Don't worry, we're not going to wipe out the full fund because I need that for next year. So that's basically the additional appropriations.
And just for clarification, I did ask Dr. Deichel before, what they're asking us tonight is to advertise.
Correct.
If they need to come back to us for actual transfers, that'll come back to us for another vote. So just to make sure we're all aware of that.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Chatterley, thank you. Any other questions or discussion?
Just one, Tom, the DLGF still has to approve this, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? All in favor? All right. Thank you, Dr. Dykle. Next, we have Barbara's Crafty Tales.
And I think it's appropriate to turn that over to Mrs. Lewis at this time.
And this is exciting. This is a program, actually it was 3 one-hour programs about Native American artifacts and culture that was scheduled for to be presented at Riverside Elementary School. The presentations align with the 5th grade curriculum, and they include comparing styles of housing, settlement patterns, sources of food and clothing, identifying and comparing historic Indian groups of the West, Southwest, Northwest, Arctic, Subarctic, Great Plains, and Eastern Woodlands. It kind of a fun, exciting presentation. Kiddos get to actually see the artifacts, kind of interact, and even get some language, learn some Native American languages and stuff. So, and the cost was $3 per student.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve the agreement with Barbara's Crafty Tales. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Chatterley, thank you. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And then last is R.E. Sutton.
Board, what I'd like to do tonight, as opposed to you taking action on this, I'd really like to just provide you some information tonight, if you don't mind, and then you can have some more opportunity to consider this as we move down the road. R.E. Sutton is a consultant in the state, an insurance consultant in the state, an individual that I've known for many years and worked with. One of his areas of expertise is implementing employee clinics in school systems. And we were talking recently, Dr. Dykle, thank you, by the way, for coming. Have a great Thanksgiving. And I won't take offense that you're leaving me while I'm talking. Yeah, no, stay seated. But one of the things that we've been looking at, Board, is how do we continue to get our revenues and expenditures in line in the general fund? And as you know, 92% of our general fund pays for salaries and benefits. So one of the big challenges is how do we reduce our expenditures as it relates to salary and benefits? Well, Dr. Dykle, as you know, and you've seen him in operation, we're always looking for ways to reduce our cost. And one of the things that he has been a part of, and I've been a part of maybe even longer than he has, is this concept of an employee clinic. And Richard Sutton is a person that has implemented clinics in school systems throughout the state of Indiana. He's an expert in this area. What we would be proposing for you to consider is that we allow him to come down. It would be $3,500 would be the cost. He would do a quick overview of our insurance program to determine the viability of a wellness clinic. What would be the pros and the cons? What would be the financial benefits of an employee clinic in our school system? School systems around the state that have implemented this have found savings in the tens of thousands of dollars annually in terms of cutting down costs. Employee clinics, employees can attend the clinics. They do not pay. They set up an appointment. If it's a 10 a.m. appointment, that's when they get in. They're guaranteed that spot, and they get in at 10 a.m. It's usually 20 minutes in length, guaranteed. So if it takes 5 or 10 minutes to diagnose their issue or their problem, the rest of the time is spent on wellness types of conversation. When they leave a clinic, they don't pay a dime. They're not billed anything. If there were any blood tests that were necessary, they're not billed for them. If there are any prescriptions that they need, they're given the prescriptions from the clinic that day. The prescription savings alone in the first year usually pays for the cost of a clinic, tens of thousands of dollars, because prescription costs are so high. The clinic with the provider of the clinic can get these prescriptions at a much lower cost. And what Mr. Sutton would show you is he would demonstrate how there's a savings of tens of thousands of dollars in the first year in prescription costs alone. Now, we've brought this concept up to the insurance committee. We've also, Dr. Dykel's been kind enough to go out and do healthcare presentations around our district into area buildings. And the idea or the concept of an employee clinic has been received favorably. Now, keep in mind, what we're proposing is bringing Mr. Sutton down to do a broad overview of our insurance program to determine the viability of an employee clinic. Does it make sense for us or not? Can we, in fact, save dollars or not? That's what we'd be paying $3,500 for. What I would also tell you is that if we continue to work through the establishment of a clinic or clinics in our school corporation, that's going to take a period of time. It's not something that we can just decide that we're going to do one week and a month later, here they are. It will take us perhaps up to a year just to work through all the steps to get the clinic going. So I would hope that you as a board will consider allowing Mr. Sutton to come down into our district and conduct this overview. He'll do a quick overview of our entire insurance program. We copied and pasted the proposal here so it shows you the things he's looking at. It's not a comprehensive analysis. That was done some time ago prior to my arrival. There was already a comprehensive analysis done that cost tens of thousands of dollars. This is not what we're doing. He's going to take him time to familiarize himself with these elements and then decide, based upon that, where is it viable or not for us to conduct a clinic. And we may decide it doesn't make sense. It's not right for us. We can't get the savings. It doesn't make sense. But right now we don't know that for sure until we were to go through this process. So I'd like you to at least consider that and process through that, and let me know if you have questions or concerns related to it, and maybe it's something that we can bring back at our next meeting. And if you have any questions, I'm sure that I or Dr. Dykel could respond to any questions if you have them now.
So we're not taking action. He moved it down to discussion for tonight, and we'll bring it back after we've had a couple weeks to digest it and think about it and ask all our questions. But do you have any questions tonight?
Yeah, I'll pose one for you, because what's the official name? Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, I'll call it. Is that it? Is that it? No, Obamacare.
Oh.
That I think that's the official name. Anyhow, no one, I don't think, has a clue what that's going to do in the next coming 6 months. I'm not so opposed to an evaluation, but my opinion is that we wait and see what happens as these programs roll out, because things are changing. Doctors are changing their practices because what they're getting. I don't know that an evaluation now would be the same evaluation in March. That's just the concern that I have. I don't even think Congress doesn't know exactly what's coming. So I don't know how a consultant could come in and tell us exactly what's going to happen either.
I think that, and I respect that. I think what you would see from Richard Sutton, I've never met a person more connected in terms of where we are from a state and federal level legislatively, and also who knows from one day to the next, or 1 week to the next, or 1 month to the next, how our federal government is going to respond to such a major issue. So, doing an analysis of this type would be information that could prove very helpful in making a decision to either choose to pursue or not to pursue the clinic. All I know is that by the end of 2013, we'll have no more money in our rainy day fund. We'll probably have to borrow money to make ends meet in our general fund. And as I look at that and I think about that on a daily basis, I feel that we need to do everything in our power to try to make our corporation financially solvent, and that's not where we are now. So any way we can find to cut costs, to bring expenditures in line with revenues, that's what Dr. Dykle and I talk about regularly, and this is just another means to help us determine whether or not we can get there.
And now, another question I have, if you could, and you hit it, you said what I was gonna ask, is if you could provide some information on how we would handle HIPAA and how we, Ms. Lewis, if we, she ain't listening to me anyway, but now, now, how we would be responsible as a corporation under HIPAA, because that's a pretty onerous, liability issue, and I don't know how the clinic and us how our partnership would play. Who would be responsible? Insurance, liabilities? I didn't know. I didn't know if we're looking at as bringing them on as employees, the doctors, or we're looking at.
Usually the agencies that provide these services, they look to hire local physicians to come in and staff the clinic. So that's one of the things that they do, but it's a contracted service, and so therefore you're protected from that perspective. So, but again, those are things that you would be able to get a lot more detail related to it through this study.
So between now and the next board meeting, Dr. Mellon, anybody who has questions, you want us to follow our normal protocol and send those to you?
If you don't mind,
Okay.
because I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with this moving forward. I just feel it's another important move in order to try to find how we can reduce our health care costs moving forward. And what you'll find the trend is around the country is organizations moving to high deductible health plans with a clinic. That's the best possible scenario for them. Now, again, it doesn't mean that's what's going to happen in Greater Clark. It just means we need to study what is best for Greater Clark moving forward, and this would be the way to initiate that.
Well, as we, if we look at this, before we do much more, I think we need a whole lot more information than what we have here. We've got 7, 8, 9, 10 lines of information that we probably ought to have a whole lot more, even before we suspend $3,500. If this is stuff that's out there, I would like to know a little bit more about it to begin with, and how some of the things work. When I hear Humana's going to do it, I think, well, that's pretty good. Humana's pretty good, but then I also think of all the money that Humana has slipped out of us over the years of that, and generally they're not out to look out for us. They have a tendency to look out for the bottom line, and they have very good bottom line. So the fact that somebody else is doing it and saying this is it doesn't always just end up real fine with me, because I think of all the things that we've had to do with that. I know over the years there were times that since we've been self-insured, that we would have a rate increase even though it hadn't cost them a penny to do anything that they had provided for us. Had not cost them a penny. All they had done was raked in the money. So before we jump into something, I'd just like to have a little bit more information, maybe some stuff that goes along with it, the committee, the teachers' health committee that's involved in that. Maybe some of the notes of their discussion that may save you know, they may have some questions answered, that would come in, as well through that. Of course, then I may not even be here either. But that could be the best thing that happened, was that I'm finally gone,
Oh, yeah.
finally gone. But, yes, but
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you for the heads up on that, Dr. Mellon. Board reports, Mr. Gilbert, you have anything?
no, ma'am.
Ms. Christensen? Mr. White? Mr. Satterley?
No.
Okay. So then we'll move on to, strategic planning update.
Board, our strategic planning group has met, I believe, 4 times now. We've finished our SWOT analysis, and I'd like to show you the priorities that were established through, again, a committee. We have a committee. If everyone would happen to be present, it would be about 92 people. We've averaged, I think, closer to 70-some at every meeting. But what we did is a SWOT analysis identifies strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And what we did is, through the process, we brainstormed all of these things, all of the possible strengths of our district, and then we broke down into subcommittees. So you can see facilities and technology, public relations, student achievement, and finance. And we had each subcommittee, with about roughly 20 people in it, give or take, identify what the priorities were, the top 5 priorities. So you can see, going across this matrix for strengths, you can see academic growth was number 1 in 3 of the 4 committees, and was number 2 in the finance committee. You can see advanced placement courses was something that was mentioned in every subcommittee. You can see committed staff. You can see a lot of consistencies in terms of areas of strength. So those were identified as top priorities. In weaknesses, community perception, without a doubt, was identified as an area of weakness. Now, we need to better define what that means. But we do know that all of our people, without doubt, said that the perception of our school system is a major weakness, that we obviously have to define what that is, and we have to address it moving forward. Finances also was mentioned, as you can see that as a top priority. You have student retention that's listed by every subcommittee, losing students to other neighboring school corporations. Diversity was listed as a weakness, but I want to be very clear. You can see it also listed as a strength. To clarify that, diversity of our student body, of our student population, is a strength. Diversity of our faculty is a weakness. It also was determined to be a threat, as you'll look here in just a second. Let's go on to the next. Opportunities. So usually, whenever you see strengths, you're looking at opportunities. And you can look across and see the top 5 by subcommittee listed. Our partnerships is a common theme, that we have a lot of people in our community that want to step forward and build partnerships with our school corporation. That's an opportunity that's right there for us. We have a lot of opportunity to more positively communicate and market our school corporation. I think we've begun those efforts, but we obviously need to continue to move forward. Showcasing our schools. We're doing great things. Again, I feel like we've made some good inroads in terms of showcasing schools. Aaron has been a great help in that regard, but we need to go to higher levels. So you can see opportunities that were defined through this analysis. And then threats, again, community perception is a definite threat. We're losing population of students, in part because of that perception. We need to do something about that. The A to F letter grades is a threat. Just not knowing what it truly means. When you get a letter grade that's not an A, then what does that truly mean? And if the public doesn't understand how that letter grade is determined, they may make some decisions in terms of their child that's based upon that. So that's a legitimate threat. So you can see those priorities. And then what we did, if you would go on to the next subcommittees, priorities by subcommittee, all we did is we basically laid it out. The purpose is our Facilities and Technology Committee must now address those areas that are identified here that were identified by the SWOT analysis. So things like strengths, safe schools, and facilities, those are things that, as we build an action plan, those are areas that we need to be considerate of. Equity in our technology, and yet we also have a threat of technology restrictions. So as that subcommittee builds a plan, the plan won't just be in those 4 areas that are identified, but they need to be addressed in the action plan. If you come down to PR marketing, you can see strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And again, these are things that the subcommittee needs to address as they build an action plan. So the SWOT analysis is identifying with a broad group of people from our community. These are things that we definitely need to take care of to move our school system to a higher level. If we go on to the next area, student achievement, you can see a lot of strengths that we need to continue to build on, but we also have some areas of weakness to address, and we obviously the opportunities to continue academic growth. Your action tonight to approve the impact program is a tremendous move in the right direction. And we did have those threats that we need to address. So as we start to bring an action plan forward, you should be able to see these things being addressed in the action plan. And down in the finance area, it looks simple, but we know it's not. Finances are a weakness. It's a one-word issue that's going to take a lot of thought. In the state funding formula, as well as vouchers and charter schools, are threats that were identified that we need to address. To go on to the next document, which is just this action plan. How are we going to build this action plan? And I want you just to focus, if you would, on the top categories. The first thing that we started to do last meeting, and we'll build upon this hopefully over the next 2 meetings, and we'll finalize, are our specific goals by subcommittee. What are those goals? We're looking at SMART goals, goals that are strategic and measurable, they're action-oriented, that are results-based and they're timely. We want to look at the development of goals, probably 2 to 5 goals in each subcommittee. We also then, once we establish our goals, we need to define specific action steps that we're going to put in place to address and meet each goal. So there could be many action steps per goal. Once we get those 2 things done, that probably will take us 2 to 3 more meetings past the goals. Then we need to look at our specific timeline. What a specific action step, when are we going to complete that? What's the current data tell us? So we have a benchmark to go by. What's our target data? Where do we want to be? And what's going to be our data source and our responsible party, because we're going to be accountable. Our district is accountable to this plan. It's not just a bunch of words on paper. This is going to drive our school system in student achievement and instruction, finance, facilities and technology, and PR marketing. And then the actual results column, we're going to be revisiting this at least twice a year. We're going to be in a meeting like this, and we're going to have the whole plan up, and we're going to say, here's where we are in mid-year, here's where we are as it relates to these action steps. And we'll do it again at the end of the year, so we're accountable to our public to know that we are making inroads, or if we're not making inroads, then what do we need to do differently? Once the plan is developed, and I hope to be able to bring this to you, maybe by the last board meeting in March. Once we have this all in place, I see the Strategic Planning Committee continuing to meet to do a mid-year review, an end-of-year review, and then another meeting prior to the next school year to look at what changes or adjustments we need to make in the plan to move forward. So it's a continuous improvement model moving forward. So just wanted to give you an update on the work that's been done. I feel very fortunate. We've got a lot of committed people involved, and I feel that we're making good progress. I don't know if you have any questions or comments.
All right, no policy review. So next we'll move to the fund monitoring report.
I'll have Dr. Deichel make this presentation. It's something we want to bring to you on a monthly basis, and obviously we'll have to make it a little bit larger so people can see, but I'll let Dr. Deichel walk you through this.
What I want to show you every month is where we are financially in our 6 basic funds. The general fund is the biggest of our funds. It's about $70 million total. And the top portion of it is all of our revenue. And it shows by month how much we actually get in the different areas. I have to take my glasses off because my sheet is small too. In the general fund, we no longer get property tax, bank tax, financial institution, well, that's the financial institutions tax, excise tax, and CVET, commercial vehicle excise tax. Those are all gone now since it's all picked up by the state. But we still get tuition. We get from outside organizations. We get interest, fees and extracurricular, rent and reimbursement, congressional interest, which is a very small amount. Our biggest portion is right about in the middle where it says state support. It's $5,200,000 a month is what we get from the state. Then there's also state grants that come out periodically, remediation, full-day kindergarten, summer school, things like that. Public Law 874, which is our impact aid for River Ridge. And we have ROTC reimbursement from the federal government, interfund transfer, sale of property, miscellaneous other, insurance claims for losses. And then at the very bottom of that first section it says TAWs, that's tax anticipation warrants, where we have to borrow money periodically during the course of the year to fund our budget. So you add all that up and we're looking at roughly about $73 million total. Then the bottom section is the expenditures, and how we keep track of it is by major program account numbers. Go up a little bit, Renee. Go up a little bit so we can stay on the left side. Like 11050 is kindergarten, 11100 is elementary, 11200 is middle school. This is everything that is associated with that account number. So it'd be salary, fringe benefits, it would be fees, it could be equipment, supplies, utilities, anything that goes into that account number is in that number where it says actual. We keep track of these by the month, and then as we get down to November and December, you see it'll say projected up at top, where right now it says actual on the screen. So right now we're projecting about $1.7 million cash balance, but right now what's holding me up is the impact aid money. I don't know if we're going to get that. That's about $800,000, so that could come down. I don't know what else we're kind of missing. I'm just worried about the impact aid is the big one right now. That's almost $1 million that we're looking at that we may not receive this year in the general fund. So that's basically the general fund. The next one.
I'm sorry, can I stop you real quick?
Yes.
So you say we might not receive it this year. Is it just a timing issue?
Yes, they are requesting a ton of information from us and also from the county assessor. And right now the ball is in the county assessor's hand. I think they've given them everything that they've needed up until about a week ago. And so everything has been sent in. We're waiting for the department in Washington to review everything, bless it, and I'm hoping we get a check before December 31st. If not, it'll hopefully be rolled into next year. But then there was an article in today's paper. You had passed a resolution at the last board meeting about the sequestration of funds, and they were talking in the article that Title I, Special Ed, and all those other state or federal grants would be reduced possibly in 2013-14 school year, but impact aid would be reduced immediately. That was scary when I read that. So how much will it be reduced? It didn't say. Is it going to go all the way down? I don't know. We may see all of the balance of our impact aid because of River Ridge gone. I don't know. Everything's still up in the air because of this budget with the federal government. So.
Tom, that $800,000 you're talking about, that's not 1 year. That's how many years back?
That's just 1 year.
That's just 1 year?
Correct.
We've got them all caught back up on all the impact aids that...
Well, I think, no, okay, I'm sorry. I think it's only up through 2008 or 9 that they've paid us, and that's why we're trying to get all this done. And as the federal government sells off more of that land, then that $800,000 starts going down, and we get less money every year, as they develop it. So.
But they've not been sending it to us to begin with, and we've continued to to fight and argue with them to try to get that money.
Correct.
And
Marty
so
was,
that's money that's owed, but it's not necessarily money that has been coming. We got a little bit of it, I think, couple of years ago maybe, that we got a decent amount of it. I can't remember exactly, but this has just been a carryover,
yeah.
and each year it adds to it. It's not like, they're just running a little behind. They'll get it to us later on. They're 3, 4, 5 years behind.
Yeah, I think it's like 2008 or 9 is,
Yeah.
where they're up to right now. And that's where we're trying to get all this information and trying to get the county to go back to 2008 and 9, give us the records. But see, the problem is, they want us going back to 1945 to 1942, when that land was actually sold to the federal government for the ammunitions plant. County doesn't have a lot of those records, or they can't find them. So then we're saying, what do we do? You know, it's not fair to us to hold us up because the county doesn't have the records. So we're waiting. We're hoping and praying that we get the money.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's
but
okay.
I wanted to get clarification on that, because it's been an ongoing issue.
Yes. So anyway, what I'd like to do is to present this at the end of every month. It's kind of enlarged now because we're getting towards the end of the year. As we get towards the end of the year, next year, what we'll do is we'll start shrinking it down. We'll hide columns and then just give you like the current month, so you can see the description, and maybe a couple months, like the last month and the current month or something like that. So that's the general fund. You can see we still have some concerns. This is already the middle of November, end of November, and we're still concerned about our revenue coming in. Okay? All right, you want to go to the next one? The next budget is the rainy day fund, and basically there's only one entry in there, and that was in September when we took out the $2.3 million, $2.4 million, and that's the only thing that we have there. So you can see in September, if you want to go down, $2,381,000 is what we took out. We have $1.1 million left in the rainy day fund. Go to the next one. Next one is debt service. This one, you know, we get revenue every month from the local county option income tax. But when you look at the expenditures are usually in January or July for our holding corporations, or they're in June and December. So that's the way they usually work it. That's really the only expenditures we have in the debt service. Renee's advertising her family.
You're like a family, Renee.
Okay, the next one. The next one is the pension debt fund, and again, it's just like our regular debt service. You only see expenditures twice a year. You'll see them in January and July, and that's it on that one. We had an interfund loan. That's basically, there's only 2 bond issues in that we have to worry about, so there's not much activity in that one. Okay, go to the next one. Next one's capital projects. This one, as you go through it, you'll see this is a tax-supported fund. We have local property, excise, CVET, financial institutions, local option income tax, refund from prior year's expenditure, refunds, insurance reimbursements. You'll see those coming in monthly, mainly the local option income tax. Usually the first 4 up there, the local property, excise, CVET, and financial institutions, you'll only get those once or twice, or maybe 3 times a year. You may get an advance draw maybe in April or May from the county, but usually it's June and December is when you get that money. The majority of it. You should get about half of it in June, half in December, assuming everybody pays their taxes, and we're at about a 96.5%, 97% tax collection rate. Hopefully it'll stay that high again this December, and we'll see where we're at, and I'll give you a report on that also. When you look at the expenditures in debt service, or capital projects, this is for all the various projects that we have. It shows we're doing technology out of there, we're doing maintenance, there's a variety of things. Insurance comes out of there, professional services, if there's any land that we have to buy, utility services, and this is a very active fund for us. And again, remember, when Marvin made his presentation, this fund is going to get hit pretty hard with the tax caps. So Steve is gonna be a very good person as far as deferred maintenance, because I may tell him he doesn't have hardly anything to spend next year because it may be going to the tax caps. So, okay, go to transportation. Quit talking. Don't have any sideboards. We have two transportation funds. We have transportation operating, which is the basic fund. That's our big transportation fund where it pays the majority of the salaries and fringe benefits for our drivers. When you look at the revenue, you see it's basically, again, like capital projects, property, excise, CVET, financial institution tax that we get 2 times a year. We get local option income tax replacement. Then there's other miscellaneous income that comes in there. So you can see on a monthly basis, we're pulling in about $12,000 a month. When you look at the actual costs, we're taking out $383 to almost $350,000, somewhere around there, per month. This includes the office, the bus drivers, the aides, the monitors, the mechanics, fuel, insurance, the contracted transportation services for our contracted drivers. Half of their salary comes out of here, the other half comes out of the bus replacement fund. And then the other transportation services could be like for DOT physicals and things of that nature. Again, this fund, we're gonna be okay this year, but next year I'm projecting that we're gonna see a deficit in it, again, because of the tax caps that are gonna be wiping out a lot of the revenue out of it. And then the last one is the bus replacement fund. This is for the contracted bus drivers and basically purchasing of buses. Again, it's local property, excise, CVET, financial institutions tax. This one will also be hit tremendously by the tax caps. We'll lose about $200,000 to $400,000 in revenue on that fund, which will impact how many buses we can buy, or do we look at buying buses that are 1 or 2 years old instead of brand new buses. We're going to have to sit down. I've already sat down with Midwest Transit, and they gave me some ideas what we could look at to reduce the cost of our buses. Right now, our buses are costing about $110,000 to $115,000 per bus, and with some changes that we could do, we can get it down to probably around $85,000. We're not going to auction off our buses anymore. We're going to trade them in. I've had very good luck with trade-ins. Auction, we get about $3,000 a bus. Trade in, I can get $6,000 to $8,000 a bus, so I can more than double it, which will help. That's really it on the basic funds that we have. What I'd like to do is, when there's activity, like a big expenditure or something, bring back bus replacement, because there's really not that much activity except for contracted services every month. Bring back that one, debt service and pension debt as needed, but then every month bring you the general fund, capital projects, and transportation operating. Those are the 3 major funds that have a lot of activity. Okay. Any questions?
I want to thank Dr. Dykle. This is extensive work, but it's also very helpful. Our goal is to be as transparent as we possibly can be financially. This will show everyone on a month-by-month basis where we are in terms of revenue and expenditures, and it also shows us compared to budget. So it shows how well we're budgeting over time as well. So it is a document. I appreciate his time and his effort, but at least everyone in our community will know actually where we stand financially in all those funds.
One of the things that we would like to do is to post our budget online too on our website, and I think that would be a good thing for transparency also.
Sounds
Go
good.
ahead. Go ahead.
Do you need official approval?
I don't know, if you need,
Just do it.
just go ahead.
Thank you. All right, we're going to talk about alternative education.
Board, as I turn it over to Mr. Hare, one of the comments I would just make is that, first of all, I appreciate his efforts and his work in trying to coordinate things. We're trying to make adjustments mid-year in several areas, and I appreciate our staff's commitment and dedication to make it happen. And again, it's also part of looking at how do we better individualize our approach to students to meet their needs. So, Mr. Hare.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Mellon and Board. I'm going to go through the first 2 slides rather quickly, and then I promise I'll slow it down a little bit. But just kind of wanted to review with the Board our current status. as it relates to alternative education. Just a reminder for the board and for the public that at our high schools, we use online education. We use eSchool and Novel Star. We have those in-house, and then we have them at Clark County High School. All of our high schools have an alternative setting where if the student's behind on credits, they can do credit recovery by period. At Jeffersonville High School, they have by period, and then they also have a half-day program, and then we have a half-day and a full-day program at Clark County High School. And that's how we're meeting the needs of our high school students. Our middle school students, if the board will remember, we used to serve those down at Options, and a couple of years ago we made the decision to move those FTEs, or those teachers, those teaching positions, back to the middle school and start a school within a school. And we did that at Parkview and River Valley, and that's currently what we are doing. The alternative to middle schools at Parkview and River Valley, it's a school within a school with one FTE, one teacher that's working with them. As Dr. Mellon mentioned, one of the directives and goals that we have as a district, and one that we believe is to increase the alternative education for our entire district in an effort to serve more students that need this. And this goes really hand in hand with that impact that we talked about earlier today. And we feel like that we're at a spot where we need to look at alternative education really for grades 3 through 12. As you talk to principals, we're starting to see students younger and younger come to school with issues both academically and behaviorally, and this would give them an opportunity. As we look at this proposal, one of the things that you might ask is, what are the exact needs? And, we think that as we continue with the no expulsions kind of the mentality, one of the things that we've come across as we're not expelling students, and especially with the middle schools, is that sometimes they need a change of setting. And if we have a school within a school, they don't get that change of setting. So this would allow us to have a change of setting for those students that have behavior issues, and then those students that have academic issues. So one of the first things is the middle schools, and we've got to get this up and running, and we'd like to take a look at making this happen, at least get started during the second semester of this year. And the first thing, obviously, is to find a place to house this. And we believe that we can move the alternative education of the middle schools to auxiliary services. We've worked with Steve Hobgood and those folks, and we've got to move facilities. It's going to be a little bit of shuffling. We've worked with Mr. Denny at River Valley Middle School, and if the board, if you'll recall, River Valley has those 2 shop classes, or the old industrial tech classes, off to the side over there by the tennis courts on the way to the football field. Currently, one of those shop areas is not being used, and right off the shop area is a classroom that is housing the alternative education. So basically it would allow us to kind of flip-flop. We would be able to serve kids at auxiliary services and then make River Valley off that side. There's a loading dock, there's a ramp, there's a workshop, there's a place for offices. So we feel like it would be a good move. There would be a minimal cost. We would have to erect some fencing to keep our vehicles secure there on that back parking lot. Mr. Denny and I walked that today, and we've actually walked it several times, but today we actually counted the parking spots. And he's going to lose about 30 parking spots that will house our vehicles. Feels like we may run into a little bit of problem with football, although it's not something that we can't overcome. Certainly there's enough room on the other side with basketball and with the plays, so we feel like that this is a move that really will fit everyone. There are 3 classrooms that we feel like that we can create at auxiliary services, and it will be pretty simple. I say that Steve Hobgood's not here. It's going to require him moving some of his stuff, but as far as actually tearing down walls and constructing things, I guess is what I mean when it's simple. There are 2 rooms that are large enough that will house the classrooms, and then there's 1 room off to the side that we can use as computer use, and all 3 of those rooms really could be up and functioning pretty easily once they're moved out and empty. So we would utilize a 15-to-1 ratio, and for second semester we would focus on the Parkview Middle School and River Valley Middle School students. We would move those 2 FTEs over to that spot. And one of the things that would be a little bit different for the middle schools compared to the high school, right now high school is really focusing on credits and credit recovery. A lot of students that are in alternative ed are behind on credits, or they've had some type of situation in life where it's causing them to not be able to be at school as much. They may be parents themselves, or they may be helping a hardship case. So they're working on credits. So that is, it's pretty easy to make that all electronic and let them earn credits. At a middle school level, we've got to focus on direct instruction. There would be some computer assistant, but it goes back to that skill and the skills learning that Amy and Ann talked about earlier. We have figured out a way to provide transportation for those students. We will be transporting those students. They can ride the bus into Parkview and River Valley, and then we'll take one shuttle that will take those kiddos from Parkview into Clark County Middle High and from River Valley, and then they'll go back home. You'll remember that was one of the issues that we ran into with the old options that we struggled with, was transportation. There's a computer lab that we'll establish that will be pretty easy. Create a criteria for academic and behavioral referrals to alternative education. That is, again, that's something that was really lacking when we had options, and it's a direct reflection of the impact. As we start to look at students that are at Tier 2, Tier 3, behaviors or academics, this could be another tool in the tool belt as we serve those kids. So we've got to look at that criteria. And then one of the things that we didn't do very well, and that's those students have to transition back to their home schools. A sixth grader that's at an alternative setting has to start working on a way to transition back to the home school. We've got to identify what the issues are, what the problems are, start working on those, start addressing those, and eventually come up with a plan to transition those students back to the home schools, because we feel that's probably where they can be best served. We have utilized a counselor this year that we've not had down there in the last couple of years that has made a tremendous impact. That's Ms. Steller, and we've been utilizing her through our Title I funds. There will be a counseling component where the students will get more of a counseling very similar to what they receive at Child Place when they're as an alternative to suspension. And then one of the things that we've talked about that I've seen some success with this and really used it in my past is that as a reward system, you know, a student in a middle school, maybe they go to school 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, and then on a Friday, maybe they have a half day, and they do some type of community service project, not as a punishment, but as a reward, some type of sense of belonging, some type of something in the community that might need beautification or painted or, you know, they really will start to take pride in those that they're useful and they're doing something good for themselves and something good for the community. And I've really seen this have a huge positive impact firsthand, and this is something that we would want to explore. And then we certainly next semester have some work to do with the elementary, and we've got to establish a committee and begin to build that program. And as always, we would need to bring that information back to the board as we develop that. That would be a group of teachers and some administrators as we look to that. So that's kind of where we're at. We're not asking for a vote tonight, but it's certainly something I think we would bring back in the very near future. I'd be more than happy to answer questions if we can.
Any questions for Travis? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's good to see a counseling component.
Yeah, I think
that's
so.
really important.
I think so too, and really excited about a plan to get those students back to their home schools. So, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any board comments, Mr. Gilbert?
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for showing up tonight as usual. I missed last meeting, and so I wasn't able to congratulate those people who were involved in the electoral process, and so you know, we'll have some new faces and some people who've been doing this job before, and I think it'll be a good board. It's been a good board, and we'll continue to do so. There had been a lot of, you know, it had been specific in an idea of that we needed to have changes in the state education department. That's where all the problems are coming from. They refused to provide us with a financial situation that we can handle. It won't work around with that. And there was a change that took place. And that change may have sent lessons, but more than likely did not. We'll have a different state superintendent, but we're going to have the pretty much same House and Senate. Now, maybe they'll take something from that and start looking at that, because if you analyze the election at all, the big victory, other than the United States Senate, was in the state superintendent's race. and it was a big win, and it showed that there were people who were concerned about the direction that education is going in the state of Indiana, and they'd like to see some changes. And maybe that will reflect in the new governor and in the Senate and the House that's there. We have to hope so, because otherwise we're in big trouble, and all the work that Tom's doing and all the work that Andy's doing to try to get us in a situation where we can continue to go. We'll, once the money just starts going away, it goes away, and it's extremely difficult for us to operate. So let's hope that those changes are there and that we're going to be moving in the right direction in the next few years. And again, thank you for showing up, and appreciate it greatly.
Ms. Christensen?
I'd like to also thank everybody for staying with us through another very informative meeting. Thank you to the staff who did all the work, and I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I did get my phone call about 5:30 this afternoon. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Same thing as Becca, just thank you all for coming, and I hope everyone takes time to be with family over the next few days and be thankful for all we have here in America.
Mr. Satterley?
Well, I wanna echo little Artie's comments. There was a change, and hopefully they can work together, because the governor, unless I'm incorrect, still appoints the state board.
Yeah.
So, you still have that side that didn't change, and this side that did change, and the governor still appoints. So, hopefully they can come to a common goal, or it'll be a stalemate, unfortunately. And like you, I hope it works. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Hope you enjoy your families. We do have our next meeting with our legislators is on January 18th, so we'll get to bend the ear of our state reps and our senator and let them know what our issues are, and hopefully get some feedback on them on what they're thinking is going to happen in the next session. So I'll make sure and report back to you all on that. And we also are scheduling a board retreat for January 29th from 4 to 9 p.m. We'll get more information out on that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Mellon.
Again, just briefly, I want Amanda, our dietitian for Aramark, is here. Thank you for sitting through this meeting, Amanda. But there's a November update that's in front of you that Aramark's doing a great job. They provide some good information. Obviously, they do provide great services for our students and our staff. So appreciate Amanda being here. Appreciate the update. Close the Deal occurred today at Charlestown High School with New Washington and Charlestown High School seniors. Travis and I had the opportunity to go up there briefly, and it was it's a great thing for our kids. And so I enjoyed at least being part of that for a short period of time, and wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving, and thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
In a second?
Second.
All in favor? Good night.
Good night.